You guys want to build a bait pen just like this? Stick around for this DIY video. We're going to show you how it's done from start to finish. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fish Blue Water channel. So if you're a subscriber, we can't thank you enough. And if you're joining us for the first time, check out the channel. We hope you really enjoyed this video and many others we have to offer in the gallery down below. And do us a favor and hit that subscribe button for us on your way out. So what do we got in store for you today? So today is DIY day, do-it-yourself day on the Fish Blue Water channel. And the subject is a floating bait pen. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to construct your own floating bait pen to keep in your backyard, a friend's backyard, whatever the case may be. You know, if you're committed and interested in learning how to catch bait, we've got videos on the channel for you there as well. This video, we're going to show you how to build that bait pen, and pretty much all of the steps of this we're going to take you through step by step. So first things first, the pen itself is a 200-gallon floating chem-tainer, if you will, that you can either purchase or order online through Tank Depot in Pompano Beach, Florida. So we're going to show you, obviously, this. It's like a commercial grade blue plastic. They also have it in a natural white color as well. Comes with a lid that you can purchase that fits nicely over top of it. And then from there, everything else is done on my side and hopefully on your side if you decide to give it a shot yourself. So before we actually jump into the process of starting to build the bait pen out for you, I'm going to take you through basically the complete list of tools and equipment that you're going to need to fully build this bait pen out yourself. So for starters, I've got two cordless hand drills here. You know, one of the most, I guess, labor-intensive and time-consuming parts of this project is going to be actually physically drilling the holes out in the bait well. So I highly recommend you have maybe a couple cordless drills or hardwired power drill if you want. Spare batteries, I've got some spare batteries inside in the garage on charge, just so that you don't have to stop, recharge, waste time, etc., etc. Next up are going to be your drill bits for drilling out the holes in the well. You can go different routes with different size bits, which I'll talk about when we get into the project based on the kind of bait you're going to be keeping into it. I got two bits here. One is a spade bit, which I have in my hand here, and the other is basically a round hole saw bit. Both will do the same job, probably tomato in terms of your preference. Moving from right to left, I then have just a simple bait scraper here. This is going to be used on the outside of the bait pen as we're drilling out those holes. If we get any hard, like plastic flares or anything like that that just need to be cleaned up and scraped off, that's what this guy's going to be for. I've just got an 80 grit sanding pad just to finish off those edges if I need to. It's not essential, but it's kind of more just for cosmetic reasons and maybe being a little OCD as far as making the bait pen look as clean as possible on the outside. Then here, I've got your standard razor blade knife. This is going to be used to basically create kind of a pattern, if you will, on the lid to customize it a bit in terms of feeding the bait. And we'll get into that when we dive into that part of the project. This is a Dremel bit to go with this Dremel tool, which I'm going to use to actually basically cut out the hole in the top of the lid that we're going to use for our feeding access for the bait. These are some snips that are going to be used to cut some of the kind of the heavy-duty plastic commercial grade netting that I have that'll be used in that insert for the well. And then we got a drill bit to drill some smaller holes up towards the top. We've got some orange noodles, like pool float noodles that I don't actually have here on display right now, but you'll see them later in the video. Those are going to be our flotation to keep the pen floating up just above the surface of the water. And these are larger, heavier duty, stronger tie wraps that are going to be used to make that connection between attachment of the noodles, the float noodles, to the bait pen. And then lastly, I basically have some heavy duty bungee cords that we're going to use to secure the lid of the well, basically to the body of the bait pen itself, so that the lid doesn't blow off, get lifted off in a heavy current or anything like that. So long as I haven't forgotten anything, and I'm getting up there in age, so it's possible, this should be a pretty comprehensive list of what you need to complete this entire project yourself. We'll have all that stuff in the comments, in the description section below. But enough about the parts and the pieces. Let's get this project started. First thing that I'm going to do when I start this project, here's the lid that I was talking about as well. It just slides right on top of the actual 200-gallon chem-tainer itself. And so these noodles, I've got 3 of them. Basically, I'm gonna want them to fall right underneath that lid, okay, when it sits down as far as it will sit. So that being said, I'm gonna give myself a visual with this spade bit of the highest that I want to go with my holes as far as the water level is concerned. That at least tells me, once I get into actually drilling out the holes, it gives me a visual reference point of pretty much the top end of my stopping point where I want to stop with my line of holes. So next up, we're going to go ahead and get this lid off and to the side. We'll come back to that in a later part of the process. And then from here comes my least favorite part of this project, because this spade bit is going to have to drill in and out of this well hundreds of times for me to be able to actually get, enough holes for the proper water flow and everything that I want in here to make sure that the bait stays as pristine as possible. So one of the things that I want to emphasize is, this thing's gonna take care of it. Don't leave it in the water too long. If it gets a lot of barnacle growth, take it out, pressure wash it. If you do those things properly, these things are gonna outlive you, okay? And it's because they're so strong and durable. So when I went to grab this from Tank Depot the other day, and I got my supplies, one of the things that you should make sure you do is at least have a couple of these spade bits. 2 or 3 I would recommend, because as you get further into this project, you will start to wear down the blades. It'll take longer to get through holes, and it'll physically start to wear you out more. So you definitely want to do that. Next thing is, I'm actually going to be drilling all these holes from the inside out, because for the most part, if I do have any like tag-in pieces or rough edges that come as I'm drilling this out, they should be on the outside rather than the inside, which obviously is the inside is where you want to make sure that the well is clean and free of any sharp edges that could potentially damage the bait as possible. So I'm going to go from inside out, and then, as I said, being OCD, I'll still probably clean out those outside edges. And as far as the size of spade bit that I've chosen, this is a 7/8 inch spade bit, okay? So the reason I've chosen 7/8 is because I'm actually going to build this well primarily for like sardines and probably pilchards, like smaller scaled baits. If I was going to build the pen primarily for like goggle eyes, bigger baits of that nature, I'd probably go to like a 1 to a 1 1/4 inch spade bit for larger holes. But if you do that and you put sardines in a bait pen like that, a lot of times they will try to swim their way out, or they'll see that light on the outside, they'll see the opening, and they'll swim naturally to it, and some of them will actually get stuck in the holes, obviously, and damage and kill the bait. So my recommendation, if you want a versatile well that you could do both with, obviously go with your smaller holes, because you could put small baits and big baits in it. But for this one, it's primarily going to be used for small sardines, small baits like sardines and pilchards. So we're going to go with the 7/8 inch spade, and let's get it started. All right, it's hot and I'm about to sweat my you-know-what off, but somebody's got to do it. So as far as like the pattern and the distance for the holes, I mean, of course I like to make everything symmetrical. You could ask a bunch of guys this question and you might get different answers. The more holes that you have in the well, the more flow you're going to have through the well. You know, in high current areas, that could be a disadvantage as well. Sometimes you don't want quite as much flow because it could beat up the baits a little bit more. But anyhow, I'm probably, this is a rule of thumb, gonna go with about a 5 to 6 inch average spacing on my holes, side to side and up and down. So you can see, you know, we're just a couple of minutes in. I already got 3 rows. So I don't know, this part should, if I had to guess, it's maybe going to take a half an hour to 45 minutes. But the key is a sharp blade. As time goes on, I want this blade to do all of the work and not my arms and my body. So if I feel like this thing is starting to labor a little bit to get through the actual bait well, I'm going to swap it out and put a fresh blade in, or a fresh bit. Yeah. All right, well, we're about halfway there. We got about this section in front of me, right around over to here, top to bottom. That'll pretty well take care of the sides. And then we're actually gonna drill some holes right through the bottom as well for water to come up from the bottom. That really helps when you throw it in the water, get it sinking a little faster. And then we'll flip it over and punch a few holes in some areas we can't get to, and we'll be ready for the next step. All right, so got a pretty good circumference pattern of holes in it all the way around. You know, obviously the good thing is if you put it in the water and you feel like you want a little more flow, you can always punch a few more holes in it. The bottom of this bait pen has basically 2 ridges in it. So I'm gonna get in here and just punch some holes in each of those ridges, and then the recessed parts that are the lowest part of the well, we'll flip it over and we'll get some holes in that as well. Some guys like to get really fancy and they have more time on their hands than I do. They actually like spell out their team name in the bottom of the bait pen or something. All right, so this is so we flipped the well over. We got the bottom of the bottom side of the well here. So these are the ridges, the high ridges on the inside that I drilled out when I was inside the well. And these are basically the lowest spots of the well. So we're gonna go ahead and punch through this way. This is the thickest part of the well, so sometimes it takes a little bit to get through it. what I like to do is kind of just let the blade slowly, unless I was using a high-powered electric hardwired drill, I kind of try to let the spade bit ease in there a little bit and take out the majority of the plastic, and then push it a little harder through as far as trying to prevent some of the kickback. I've had a good charge on these drills, good batteries, and this bit has actually been doing pretty good. I did swap out to a fresh bit when I was on the inside, knowing that I was going to be going through some thicker material, and that did do better. However, that's an older cordless drill, so it didn't quite have as much power as this either. But yeah, I mean, one bit's been pretty good, but I still recommend having a backup for sure. I can tell this battery is starting to lose its juice in just in the nick of time, because I got just one more hole to run in the bottom of this. And that's it. I think we got all the holes as far as water flow is going to be concerned in it. This makes a big mess. So what we're going to do next, move this to the side, sweep all this plastic up so we can get it in a proper garbage receptacle, and then we'll move on to the next step. First step is down, next step up. So what I normally like to do is run my hand kind of around the inside of the well just to see if we've got any real rough edges. It all feels pretty good, but I got like this 80 grit sanding block that I'm just going to kind of lightly go over the inside, just knock off any burrs and edges. And then for the outside, I've got basically this painter scraper that if there's a couple of rough edges, we'll just chip those off real quick, and then we'll hit that with a light quick sand as well. All right, step 3, lid's back on top, and basically I was just looking for something that I could pattern a hole in this. I found this in the fence on the side of my house, which of course is a lid to a 50 or 100 gallon bait well, also available at Tank Depot. So I used that with this razor knife that I was talking about in the opening of the video, and I basically just set it where I felt it looked good, and I patterned the hole the size of that lid, which I think is a good size in terms of being able to feed the bait without taking the lid off. Until the bait really settles into the pen, particularly for the first week, maybe even 2 weeks, particularly if a few haven't been handled just right, when they settle in, when they're settling in, they're stressed, and sometimes that stress obviously can lead to some die-off, but the opening and closing of the lid gets them nervous, swimming fast, sometimes they bang into the side of the well, and so this kind of becomes nice for that, in that you can start introducing some food into the well for them. Takes them a time to acclimate and really eventually start eating it, but it's not as disruptive. It does not get them all worked up in terms of getting some food, and slowly over time, as you introduce that food, they will start eating it, and next thing you know, you'll have them like trained pets, 1, 2, 3 times a day, however often you want to feed them. I typically recommend usually a morning and an afternoon if you're trying to pin them up for a while, but this makes that job a lot easier. So I got the handy dandy Dremel tool here. basically just with a cutting bit. And all we're going to do is we're going to get into the well itself, and then I'm going to work my way around to cut that pattern out.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
All right, that's that. There doesn't have to be anything perfect. I got off of my line there just a little bit. I give myself maybe a B- on my Dremel tool cutting, but the reality is it doesn't matter. This is a hole in the center of the well to be able to get bait inside for the, or excuse me, get food inside there for the bait. So, got a little bit of hair that's formed from cutting that. And now we are ready for the next step. All right, I don't know, step 3, step 4, wherever we're at, is installing this commercial grade black, like heavy duty poly netting to the inside of the lid, which basically is going to keep birds and critters out, but allow us to throw bait in. Also let a little more natural light into the pen, which is not a bad thing. Didn't mention this at the start of the video, but this is actually available through a company called Atlantic and Gulf. I think they're down in Miami. They're like a commercial fishing equipment and product supplier. Can actually build full cages out of this stuff, whether they're floating or sinking. Maybe we'll do that in a future video at another time. But for now, I'm just using this for the actual surface that's going to allow access to get food into the well for the bait that we catch when we put them in there. So got some smaller tie wraps for that, and all I'm going to do is I already kind of just basically cut a pattern out of this that's just large enough to fit over the opening of the well, and I'm going to drill some holes in a few different spots around the well where we can run these tie wraps through and connect them on the other side. What I'm doing, I'm actually coming through the top side with the blunt end of the tie wrap because I want that on the outside of the well, not on the inside of the well. You know, just because the smoothest side of the connection without any, you know, sharp edges where I would have cut the tie wraps is not going to be on the inside of the well. Again, is it a little particular? Probably, but I would just, there's no reason not to do it, honestly, and just make your cleanest connections you can on the side of the well where the bait's going to be. So that's what we're doing. All right, mesh is installed, tie wraps attached. All we got to do now, I should have some smaller snips for this than I do, but it's what I found in the garage, so it's what we're using. Do the job. Just gonna make sure those are nice and tight. Try to get that connection clipped off as clean as possible. And that should be pretty secure right there in the middle of the well. So whether it's some cut up fish bait, there's also a company called Aquatic Ecosystems, which you can get dry, very small sinking or floating like fish food pellets that are really high in nutrients for the bait. Sometimes it takes them a little while to adjust to the dry food. A lot of guys will get them started on, you know, real fish and stuff like that first. But this makes it easy. Leave the lid on, do what you need to do. The only time you would really ever need to take this lid off is, of course, if you're going fishing, or if you did happen to see that maybe you had some loss or some dead baits in it. You typically don't want to leave those in the well for extended periods of time. You never know what kind of like ick and diseases they could put off in the water that might potentially affect the other bait. So we got that part done, and next up we're getting ready to install the floats on it. All right, so guys, we're on the downhill stretch here. Nothing fancy. There's a couple different ways you can go with on the floats. You got tackle shops that also sell like bullet buoys that you can run either heavy duty monofilament or some light rope through, clip them or attach them to these. That works fine. This is a pretty simple and easy way to go, and I also find that like if you're transporting these bait pens, like if you were traveling somewhere, let's say fishing a tournament somewhere or going on vacation and you wanted to be able to store baits in the water out of your boat for a while, it's pretty easy to stack multiple pens if you needed them with this kind of a float, you know, a pool noodle floater on the edge. So that's why I figured I would do that today, just to show you. And it's a pretty easy install, pretty easy removal if you needed to take it off. Pretty sure this is like a closed cell foam, these pool needles. They are going to take some wear and tear, but they're like $2-3. So if you need to replace one, it's not a big deal. So again, noodle is going to fall right up under this lid. So going back to these holes that I created around, I'm going to get myself a hole above some of them for the other side of the tie wrap we're going to attach. And then we got these heavy duty tie wraps. This is really important. Don't chintz out and go with a lighter tie wrap, because you know these pens are going to get beat around a little bit in the water, tide going up and down, boat traffic up and down the canals. You know, so there'll be some movement and friction and a little bit of wear and tear. And I don't think I have any, but you saw the size of the other ones we were putting on. Those would be much easier to break. It's just super heavy duty and just a place where it's worth spending a couple of extra bucks. Same deal. So like I want this part of the tie wrap on the outside of the well, not the inside. So before I get started, you know, I just slide that lid back, run the tie wrap through. I can even do that for some of these others if I want, so that it's already kind of ready to rock and roll. All I got to do is get my noodle kind of where I want it. That'll be fine. And now I'm just gonna get my tie wraps wrapped around. I think for now I'll just kind of get everything, before I go super snug, just get everything in place. I even recommend sliding these tabs down so that they're not sticking out, like if the boat rubbed up against them or anything like that. They're hidden kind of underneath the bottom side of the float, like so. There you have it. We're gonna finish that off in a minute, but I've got 2 more sections and we're just gonna keep working our way around. Tidying up the end pieces on a couple of them right now. Make sure they're nice and snug. That one's probably fine, but I'm going to put one more tie wrap in it. All right, I think it'll probably be easier to cut these if we turn it over, like so. Get my snips. Just gonna work our way around the bottom of this pin. We're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, get that lid on. Now, last thing I'm going to do is going to involve these little bungees here. So, the purpose of these bungees is going to be to make sure that the lid stays firmly intact on top of the well. So whether it's not likely that wind would blow it off, but you never know. If we had a crazy storm or something. More importantly, boat wakes, heavy current, stuff like that. You can get up underneath it and not hard to push that lid off. So if you don't have something that's keeping some pressure, holding it down, all that bait, right, that you worked hours to catch one day or one evening, burned fuel, burned up your time, all excited, brought it back, fruits of your labor, come back a day, a week later, whatever, excited and ready to fish. You don't have to get up and catch bait that morning because you already did the work. And you come back, the lid is gone, the bait is gone because the birds have gotten in there and had a heyday, pelicans, you know, you name it. And that, been there, done that. That is a huge, huge buzzkill. So all we're gonna do is probably run a hole in the top of this and look for a way that I can, a hole we're going to stretch it to so that we can undo the, or we can get the bungee clipped into one of the holes that we created. Keep the lid nice and tight. These are a little longer. I probably, I would maybe even consider, I'm not going to do right now, but this is really heavy duty rubber. I got these specifically instead of like your standard bungee because you want something really strong that can handle a little bit of a beating. The standard bungee is probably going to wear out a little bit with the UV rays and the sunlight and stuff like that. This is going to hold up a lot better. But what I might consider doing, because you could run this out of here just like this if you wanted to, is probably cut this and shorten it up and run it to a hole that's going to be a little bit higher up on the well to where I don't have to go so far down to find myself an attachment point. But for demonstration purposes now, we're just going to go with what we got. All right, so what I did is I went ahead and hooked that inside the well now, and I'm going to look for a good pressure point, like of distance, that I might want to stretch that to. So that looks pretty good there. So we're going to... There we go. Could probably have used that bigger drill bit, and I did. But we got her in there. Let's take it to the other side. And there you have it. Just like that. Now look what we've done. It's not coming off. You're good to go there. So we now, and basically, I don't know, a 5 or 6 step process, which started with obviously picking up the 200-gallon bait pen from Tank Depot in Pompano. Again, if you're not local, obviously you can order them and have them shipped. Got it here in probably a half an hour's time. We knocked the holes in it. Took 10 minutes of time to pattern the hole for the lid, attach it, tie wrap it. Another 10 or 15 minutes of time to get our floats attached. Drill a couple of holes for our bungees to hold the lid in place. What do you say we put it to the test? So you can see, even with those holes in the bottom, still going to take a little bit of time for the water to start to fill up in the well, and eventually we're going to get that other side to come down and to where it should be floating basically right at the level of those orange floats that we've created. That gives us a good amount of water inside the well to be able to hold a good amount of bait, which in closing, let me also tell you that obviously, you know, we're big on taking good care of your bait. Your bait is everything when you go fishing. Good bait, a lot of bites, a lot of action. Bad bait, a lot of times you're watching other people catch fish around you. So in that, like this 200-gallon chem-tainer, don't think that you can pack it full of 500-600 baits. Maybe if you were going to go fishing the next day and you're live chumming and you want to load up, that's one thing. But if you're trying to keep baits in a well, keep them healthy long term, I would say on small baits like pilchards and sardines that we would put in here in a 200-gallon well, my max would probably be around between 150 and 200 depending upon the size of those baits. Threadfin herring, which is a much more delicate bait, if I'm trying to keep them for a tournament or something, I'm probably not going to put more than 100 baits in that well you see behind me. Goggle eyes, they're a hardier, tougher bait. If I'm just using them for fun fishing, I'd probably go 10 dozen to maybe 150 baits if I was trying to be real picky, keeping them for tournaments. You know, again, I'd probably have 80 to 100 goggle eyes of varying sizes in there. So hopefully that helps you in terms of thinking about, like, once you have the bait pen built, like how to properly store the bait, how to keep the bait, how to care for the bait, depending upon how many baits you want to keep and how many you're planning to fish with. So there you have it, guys. DIY, do it yourself on Build a Bait Pen. Like I said, Tank Depot, Pompano Beach is the source on that. Everything else comes from your local hardware store. Easy to assemble, easy to put together. If I can do it, you can do it. Any questions, drop a comment below. We hope you enjoyed this educational video. Hope it makes you a little bit better in your next fishing excursions, and we'll see you for the next Fish Blue Water video.